Hi, this is Jose Vega, your federal court certified interpreter. Today, I have a very important video, especially for you paralegals, you that do the scheduling. If you're a one man or one girl shop, this is very important. You don't want this to happen to you. Let's say you have a deposition scheduled and it may be, 3 or 4 hours, and halfway through the deposition, your interpreter is replaced. You get a new interpreter, the new interpreter comes in, the other interpreter had to leave for XYZ reason, and they come and they don't understand the terminology because you're way into the deposition already. Your lines of questioning are more advanced. And there may be company names and numbers and information and names of people, and it's just starting all over again. It's not good to switch interpreters halfway. So how can you avoid this? How can you, as a paralegal, you as a scheduler, as a lawyer, avoid this from happening, stop this from happening? Well, why does this happen? Well, and there's other interruptions too, because before the switch, you usually have the interpreter texting, trying to find a replacement. They may need to be replaced at another job. And so there's distractions stemming from this. I would say that when you schedule the interpreter, you have to be very clear with the agency how long you need the interpreter for. So if it's in the afternoon, let's say 1 p.m., it's usually not a problem because interpreters will not have more than one afternoon job. If you're scheduling the interpreter for the morning, however, let's say you schedule the interpreter 10 and 11, those are very tricky times. Try not to schedule depositions at 11 o'clock. What happens is that the interpreter will get one morning job and one afternoon job. If you said, okay, it's going to be 3 hours, the interpreter schedules 3 hours, and it turns out your depo lasts 3 hours and 15 minutes. Well, what happens if they had a 1 p.m. depo, right? 11, 12, 1, 12, 1, 2. Let's say they had a job scheduled at 2, 2:30. If you go long with your morning deposition, they won't be able to make it to the afternoon. And the afternoon job may have been scheduled way before you scheduled your deposition. Is it fair with the attorney that scheduled this interpreter for the afternoon? If you had, was it fair for them to not have this interpreter that they reserved when it's actually your law firm's fault for not allotting enough time for the morning interpreter? So when you do the scheduling, be sure to tell the agency that you need the interpreter for X amount of time, the maximum amount of time that you think the depo will last. So you think the depo is going to be done in 2 hours, but maybe there's a chance that it may last 4. Just say 4 hours. It's better to do it that way and have them reserve the interpreter for the 4 hours, and the interpreter will know ahead of time that they cannot take another job for at least 4 hours after the start time of this job, than to have to run around trying to get a replacement interpreter in the middle of a deposition. I think this is the best advice I could give you. Just let them know if you need an interpreter for 3 hours and you're sure it's not going to be more than 3 hours, then you have to be ready to have that interpreter once the 3 hours are reached, for the interpreter to stand up and leave. If you're willing to accept that, then that's fine. Even if you have to pay a little extra, right? So you have a deposition at 10 a.m. and now the interpreter, if it's going to last 4 or 5 hours, it may last 1. But if now you have them booked for the morning and afternoon, so now you have to pay the interpreter a higher minimum, maybe not, but because you have to pay, you may have to pay a little extra, or maybe a couple hours extra, because you're reserving the morning and afternoon for this interpreter. But depending on the case, it may be worth it than to have to switch interpreters halfway. What happens if you're switching halfway because it's an emergency and there are no other interpreters available? Sure, for Spanish and common languages, we may have interpreters available. And especially now that we do depositions via Zoom, right? We may be able to find an interpreter easier than before. But what happens if you have another language? You need an Italian interpreter, and the Italian interpreter, the only one that's available is 2 counties up north, and they have to travel down and make it. It'll end up costing you more. Plus the aggravation, and arguing with opposing counsel and all that, having to pay the court reporter, et cetera, et cetera. So I would suggest be very clear with how long you need the interpreter for. Just get the maximum number in your head, 3 hours, 6 hours. Remember, interpreting takes longer than a normal depo. Whatever amount of time that is, let the agency know. And it never hurts to ask the interpreter as you walk in, as they walk in, hey, you know this is scheduled for 6 hours, right? And just double check to make sure that your agency does that. We started doing this in our agency. We tell the interpreter the expected time that the job is going to last, and we inform you, the client, for how long we have reserved the interpreter for how long we've reserved the interpreter. So so that this is not an issue. It's something that we started doing, and I think it will help avoid these last minute changes that occur in the middle of a deposition. Another thing that you may think, well, why doesn't the interpreter stay in my deposition, and why don't they send another interpreter to the afternoon deposition? It may be that the afternoon attorney reserved ahead of time and they have priority. They specifically requested that interpreter. It may be that the interpreter is a freelancer, so the freelancer has to work for a different agency. And on occasion, the interpreter speaks 2 languages. So we have one interpreter speaks Spanish and Italian, and they have an Italian assignment in the afternoon, an Italian job in the afternoon, and they can't do that Italian job. They can't just find an Italian interpreter just anywhere. They're hard to find, and people reserve these interpreters way ahead of time. So well, that was my advice for today. I hope you liked the video. Please like and subscribe, and visit us legaltranslations.net/blog. Thank you.